Hi there guys, Ken here, your thrifty apprentice, and welcome back to another Sketchbook Sunday. Today we're going to be doing a mixed media painting of a set of hunter knives. I originally painted this composition back during World Watercolor Month 2020 as one of the prompts, and there were a few of those that I wanted to kind of make into tutorials. So this is one of them, and I'm going to be using Grumbacher watercolor paper, and this is from their detachable journal, which you'll get to see later on. I'm just using a couple of brushes, a couple of rounds, number 6, number 8, and I do believe I use a flat brush at some point as well. And the paints that I'm using are Master's Touch. This is from the 36 semi-moist watercolor set, so I'm just testing those or continuing to test those so that I can do a review. And as I've told you guys in previous videos, I eventually am planning on doing a full review of the Master's Touch line by Hobby Lobby. Well, at least their water soluble products anyway, and maybe the colored pencils. So I am testing each one of those products individually so that I could eventually do like a compilation video um, on the entire line itself. But this later on down the line. So what I've done here, yeah, let's get to the actual painting, is based in the handles of both of the hunting knives. One of them is blue, and one of them is actually going to be green with yellow and brown accent. So that's ultramarine blue that's based in on the blue knife. And I took cad yellow, I do believe that's what it's called in that set, or maybe bright brilliant yellow. I'm not exactly sure right off the top of my head, but I use that to base in the wood part, or should I say the accent part of the knife. That's peak green that I'm using to base in the rest of the handle of that green knife, and yellow ochre is going to go down the stripes eventually, and then burnt sienna is going to bring in the wood tone. The blades of the knives are done with a mixture of the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna in order to make a gray, and I just watered it down just because I wanted to give the blade sort of that nickel effect. So I gave that time to dry, and then I went back in with a second layer of the color on both the handles and the blades for each one, just because I wanted to add a little bit more punch to that. Now the thing about it is these colors, from what I've been able to see so far, work well depending on the type of paper. I do believe, honestly, and I'll get more to that when I do the review on them, that they work better on 100% cotton paper. You just get a more vibrant color payoff. And this is a cellulose paper that I'm working on here. The Grumbacher kind of puts me in the mind of, say, like Canson XL. So it sort of gives you that feel. It does have sort of a grit to the texture, but it's not heavily sized. But you can feel the size of it if you run your hand across the surface of the paper. So um, I think it kind of lends better to doing paintings with maybe like watercolor pencils, watercolor crayons, maybe even colored pencils. But I wasn't really happy at the way that the paints were performing on this, the paints themselves were performing on this paper. Now, of course, you know me, I'm not one to give up, so I'm going to continue to press forward with the painting and layer and add to it until I can get it to a satisfactory point. But I'll be honest, I became frustrated at many points doing this painting. So see here, I'm actually basing in the stripes down the green knife, excuse me, with the yellow ochre now, and I just darkened the blue mixture by adding a little burnt sienna to it in order to start adding in the shadow side of the blue knife, and the burnt sienna itself was then carried over to emulate the wood part of the accent on the green knife. So I'm just going to go back and forth with the paints, continuing to layer and mix. I didn't use any more than those 6 paints. I wanted to make sure that I had color harmony. So I'm cross-pollinating, so to speak, the colors from one knife to the other, making sure that the composition is going to look okay, hopefully, at the end. At least I think it turned out okay. But I wanted to throw it away at several points, if I'm to be honest. Now I'm going to start here. You'll see me working on the darker green in order to add the shadow side to the knife. Now that green was made from the original peak green, excuse me, that I used to base in the handle, and I added a little ultramarine blue to it just to start to darken and deepen the value of that color. Um, that pretty much is what was done. I mean, as far as the paints are concerned, you're just going to see me go back and continue to actually layer more paint on top in order to get the colors deeper and a little bit more vibrant. The darker, oh yeah, I did forget to tell you guys, I'm sorry. The darker part around the blade was simply me taking the gray that I had mixed, adding less water to it, more pigment, and making it a darker color in order to do that part of the blade that would sort of be flat and sharpened. And the lighter part of the blade was supposed to emulate the part of the blade that would be raised. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't forget to put my shadows in to ground these knives, but I do forget in this video in order to, I do forget to drop in highlights. And that's unfortunate because it really would have added that extra little oomph to the picture, but I mention it to you guys because I don't want you to forget. Um, Eventually what I did was went back in with a really watered down mixture of the ultramarine blue to base in on top of the blue knife again, simply because I wanted to kind of flatten some of the texture that was starting to build up in it. Only because I knew I was going to be adding more with the color pencils before this was all said and done, because it is a mixed media project. So you're going to see me doing what I said earlier. I'm just really going back and continuing to layer the colors on top of themselves. I did go ahead and paint in the parts where the screws would be. On the green knife, I think I went with like a dark green, the darker green. And on the blue knife, I went with burnt sienna. I don't know. I just thought they went well. And that's pretty much going to cover all of the painting as far as the knives go. Next here you see me actually dropping in shadow, and that shadow was mixed from the same color that did the blades, just a little bit more water control in order to get a medium tone gray here. And as I put it down, it was creating hard lines, although I did wet the paper before I put the pigment down. Again, another attribute to this particular paper, I do believe. So I'm going to just take a wet brush with no pigment on it and go back in on top of it in order to try to soften those hard edges that were created when I originally painted in the shadow. And I'll do that on both knives, of course, in order to make sure that the shadow kind of diffuses as it moves away from the object. Once my shadow's dried, I grab my colored pencils, and this is where I'm going in and layering color in order to add texture, to kind of fill in those parts of the grain of the paper that the paint may have missed, and to just add a little bit more depth and punch to the composition overall. Now, I'm using my KingArt Pro um, colored pencil set here in order to add on this layer, and I will eventually be getting around to a review of those as well. But as you guys know, I don't really do colored pencils solo as much as I do using them in mixed media projects. But I'll do a couple of solo paintings with those pencils, that way I can offer a review and my thoughts and opinions on how they perform. I will go ahead and say that they were a really good value for the number of pencils that you get. And as you can see here from the composition, they really did lend to kind of punching up the color and adding texture to the painting, sort of adding weight to it, so to speak. I really wish I had have remembered to put the highlights on the composition. I think it would have really given it that last little push it needed in order for it to be complete. And I probably will go back and do it later on after, you know, after a minute, so to speak. But anyway, so I'm just punching up the colors here, and I'm gonna go in and base in some cool gray in the shadows. And that pretty much brings everything that I did to a wrap there, guys. Hopefully I was able to give you some tips or some tricks here, or you were able to see some tips or tricks that will help you out in your painting adventures. Don't forget to give the videos a thumb up if you like what you saw. Go ahead and subscribe. Share. Remember that sharing is caring, and I love to hear what you guys have to say and your feedback. So go ahead and leave comments. I would love to talk to you and see what's up. Don't forget to check us out on the Thrifty Apprentice Facebook page. We're also on Instagram under the Thrifty Apprentice. I would love to see you guys. Come over and share your work. Let the rest of the community see it. That way we can see how we're all growing and learning together. Um, yeah. And that's pretty much it, girl. Like I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting.